online at the moment.
Okay, all right, very good. And I'll call the meeting to order of the wastewater study committee on the 20th of June at 6:30. And real quick item, March.
20th of March.
20th of March. I'm sorry, the warm weather is affecting me. 20th of March. Excuse me.
It was hoping it was summer, not spring.
Yeah, that's right. My head is elsewhere. Quick item, which is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Vote to start here.
Attendance.
Since it's a hybrid meeting in theory, but
I don't think we need a roll call. I think we just. All right.
Shea,
President is Brian Shea, Alan Belniak, Al Hamilton, Sam Stivers, and Claire Reynolds,
Okay.
joined by Mr. Lombardo from Lombardo Associates.
Okay.
Yeah. And is there a motion to approve the minutes from the March 13th meeting?
so moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I haven't even seen them.
Oh.
So I'll abstain.
when were they sent and all honesty?
Sam sent them out, but
I sent them to you.
okay. We'll do it next month meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh,
Please feel free to send them directly to everybody.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
You want to send?
You don't
Yeah,
need
send it.
me as a
Yeah.
middleman.
Okay.
Okay, all right. We have Pio Lombardo from Lombardo Associates with us, and he was, his firm is the author of the wastewater management action plan for Route 9, which was done in about a year ago, just a little less than a year ago. And we are pleased to welcome him here and would like to have him sort of give us a brief presentation that's a summary of his plan, and then sort of a discussion of, we're going to hear to pick his brain about everything wastewater. So
There you go.
let's take it away. But actually, why don't we go around and let's introduce ourselves.
Sure. Alan Belniak, obviously a new member to the committee here. A former practicing or still registered civil engineer in the state of Massachusetts, and I currently work for a civil engineering consultant.
And you work for who? I'm sorry.
A civil engineering consulting company.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
In which, I'm sorry, which branch? Of civil engineering, are you
Traffic and transportation.
practical? Okay, great. That's it.
Brian Shea, been in town about 30 years or so, former select board member, a civil engineer by trade, work on the water, wastewater side.
Claire Reynolds. Work together on the wastewater action plan. And my recommendation to bring them in to talk to the group.
I'm Al Hamilton. I'm a member of the select board. I've been in town for 28 years, and I'm a troublemaker.
Good. I'll second that. Sam Stiver is also on the select board. I've been about as long as Al is.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you all and for the invitation, and it's an honor to be here. What I thought I would do is can I get access so I can show my PowerPoint slide?
I sent
He's
you
the
link
man.
to meeting.
What's that?
I emailed you the link to the meeting. You can join that.
Pete emailed you the link, the Zoom link.
Let me just sign in.
That's why we get here at 6 o'clock to make sure that we're ready to go by
Sorry,
6:30.
Okay, there we are. I see it. Thank you. So we'll do sharing, is that it?
Yep. Once you're in the meeting, I'll promote.
You need to turn your sound off. The echoes.
So in a moment. you'll
Okay,
be a
that's
panelist.
all, right?
Yeah.
So I join as a panelist?
In a moment, you're now a panelist. You will be. You have to accept the You have to accept the invitation to become a panelist,
Sure.
and then you'll see the green share button down the bottom,
Okay,
and you should be good to go.
I've been promoted to be.
Promoted.
That's a good step.
Wow, I'm having a good day. Okay. All right, so then, do I go to share?
Yep, the green button down
Yeah.
bottom, and it's going to ask you what.
Sharing is not turned on.
All right, and give me 1 second. Okay, try again.
Okay, let's do it. See how she goes.
There we go.
Oh, good. Okay, great. we do full screen here.
Little easel in the bottom right corner next to the slider.
What's that again?
You see the little slider in the bottom right corner?
Right.
There's a little easel there. If you click the easel,
Got it.
you'll go presentation mode.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, right. Yeah, that's much better. Much better. Okay, well, let me provide, what I wanted to do, I thought it would be helpful because we don't really know each other, and I'm sure you don't, many of you don't even know how did I get here? So, Lombardo Associates' experience with the town, frankly, goes back to year 2001, in which and I reached out to Paul, and as part of the frankly marketing work, etc., because our specialty, as you'll see, is really with what's referred to as decentralized systems or cluster systems, etc. So, and we've done many of them, and my opinion, Southborough is a huge, good candidate for that approach. So reached out to them and proposed a modest budget, sort of executive analysis of the applicability of alternative systems, wastewater management systems for the town. And frankly, ultimately, we recommended that they do the CWRP. Okay. And and we've been very active with CWMP preparations, frankly, going back to 1975. Okay. So we were retained by the town for a modest effort, big picture level, etc. Nothing really went after. Okay. And Southborough, like many of the towns, and this better than I, they talk sewers as always causes anxiety. Right? Mm-hmm. So so anyway, nothing happened. Oh, last June, I got I think a call or an email from Claire and said that basically that that their project had a modest budget remaining, and that Paul had recommended to Claire that Lombardo be retained to look at, to provide a different perspective, because Paul and I hit it off like two peas in a pod. Okay. So he knows that, our specialty is with the decentralized and systems, and he thought this would be another way. And Paul can speak for himself, but that it would provide a different perspective than firms that are heavily focused on big city solutions, large treatment plants, lots of sewers, et cetera, et cetera. So, because our approach is really alternatives to conventional sewers, and our niche and frankly business plan has been since the beginning of serving unsewered communities with alternatives to conventional, because we started back in the early 70s, and I'm sure you remember the 1977 Clean Water Act amendments, in which there was incentives for the use of IA technology. Okay. And because there was severe negative impacts associated with conventional sewer, the category being in Southborough, I know would be right in there, undesirable growth would occur. Okay, all hell would break loose. The high rises are going to come, and that did happen quite a bit. So, so in any event, so we were at the forefront of activity at that time, and I'll get into this a little later in more detail, but that's sort of that's our genesis. That's how we started, and we were always focused on alternatives to conventional. Okay, so that's how we got about, and it was, basically scope of work was, what do you think, Theo? And, the budget though is $9,000 and you've got 3 weeks to do the work.
Comprehensive plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right,
We ended up coming in under budget on that Route 9 grant that was funded. So I contacted the state, they had upfronted the money, and I contacted the state and said, how do we return the money back to you? Knowing full well that they didn't want it back. Okay, and I said, but I would be remiss if I did not say that we could use the additional money. Because we're dealing with 40B housing all along Route 9 and other things. And the guy got back to me and said, sounds like it's right along with the program, and update me when you get it done. So we ran with that.
so, and, you know, so we basically, obviously put pretty intensive effort together, put together a report and worked very close with Claire, and that's really how, we developed a strong relationship, and Paul. So, we toured the town, did a lot of studies and et cetera, and condensed and understood what, the good work that had been done previously, because there was a lot of work that had been done. It's sort of a little bit encapsulated here, but there's a lot of work that had been done that is really part of what gets done in CWMP. Okay, so so that's the genesis of our work, and so what I assembled tonight is, I'm going to call it, I tried to pull together the pearls, if you will, that we observed and identified, and to weave together a, let me call it, story, and that would provide the town with guidance on really what to do next. And I also have a bunch of slides here about who we are and what we've done, so that you would be able to understand why I may speak, formatively or with strong confidence about certain things. So I'll be happy to go through those, but I thought, we can do that after, so you can understand context. But I sort of came prepared to the interview and to share with you why we're as good as we are. Okay, so let's talk about, obviously your situation that here, and like we were speaking out at the beginning, bottom line at the end of the day, disposal capacity and water reuse. Water reuse is challenging to do. Will define the wastewater flow and the development capability. Okay, so at the end of the day, one has to have a list and quantification of what is the disposal capacity that's available to the project in the area. And there's obviously a lot of different areas. Okay, so to me, that's first and foremost. And in many respects, what one does and is that we're going conceptually on the CWMP, we're going backwards. Okay, because when you go as new CMDP, and you've already started CWMP, you got to go through this whole drill, problem definition, et cetera, and then, okay, what are the alternatives? Well, if you can hit the wall, why wait 2 years to hit the wall? So it's not cheap. We've done many, $400,000 or $500,000 is not unusual. Okay, and 2 years. So I would urge you to, you'll do it CWMP, but you really want to cut to the chase, because the name of the game, as it's clear to me, as I put in the beginning, the project objective is to facilitate Route 9 development to offset, I'm trying to be diplomatic here, but economy changes to the tax base. Right?
It's not a secret.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Okay, this is not I'm gonna call it a water quality driven project. You don't have contamination to deal with. You do have modest, nothing to get excited about. Okay, so that's the drive. So again, and in many respects, this is a business plan that needs to be put together. Okay?
Yeah.
So to that point, so disposal capacity really defines with what you got. And without knowing that, you're again a kid in a kidding store with 5 cents. And your eyes may be a lot bigger than stuff. Okay? Uh, the second key item that just for reference and sort of underlining this issue, at the end of the day, the customers, their attitudes are gonna be dictated by user charges. Okay? And the user charge is gonna be heavily influenced by I'm gonna call it outside funding of the capital costs. Okay? If you have to amortize all of the capital costs into the user charge, you're gonna hit the wall on affordability. As a general statement. And we see that all the time. And so what I put there as another item is, the project needs to, in my opinion, on these opportunities, and again, this is all about how do we achieve success and reasonably quickly. It needs to be cash flow positive. So because that's the only way it's going to be viable. And I'm sure you've heard the saying, happiness is positive cash flow. Well, project viability is positive cash flow. And that boils down to grants and innovative financing mechanisms need to be pursued. And Claire's obviously the expert on a lot of those near-term opportunities, and a one-stop being one of the one. Okay.
Yeah.
The other
She's got
observation.
broad shoulders.
Excuse me.
Claire has broad shoulders.
Right. Right. So the other thing is, the other observations, if you will, are the town owns very little land. Okay, so you're not gonna build a merchant facility and, you'll build it and they will come. No, you don't own it. Okay. Obviously the property owners do. So they have to be at the table. Because they're really gonna make, you're not gonna get into eminent domain. Okay,
Not necessarily,
what's that?
not necessarily.
Right.
We're open to that.
Yeah, good, because there is a huge opportunity in my opinion. But
Yeah,
you
we
got it.
we have actually had conversations with some of the major developers along Route 9. And I'd say very positive feedback, 3 out of 4.
Pretty good.
They see that as the keys to higher density
Right.
and higher values. So we haven't been thrown out yet.
But,
And
well,
at least,
they're the ones that are gonna pay the bills.
Right.
at the least, we're talking about eminent domain to get the pipes up and down Route 9.
Well,
Some places at least.
Let's talk about that when we get into
Okay.
that. What I, Frank, when you said that, let me get to that in a minute.
Okay.
Let me not jump around. So, there's a lot of vacant buildings. And I was amazed when we drove around to, and actually, that's more a COVID impact, et cetera. Right? So, one key point, and I highlighted these things because my recommendation is these are the things that one can peel off in terms of objectives that these items have to happen. Okay, these are elements, if you will, they're part of the stool. Okay, that needs to be. So, is a marketing study. Now, and when I say marketing study, it's really, how do you optimize what's there? Now, you've got some pretty smart developers that are involved in my hunch is that you're going to be doing this kind of activity interactively.
Yep.
And but I put that up because you could use assistance in I think I watched the video last time and I think Claire had said that, hey, there's other towns that's got money for that purpose. And we're working for one of them in Westford. Okay, it's a site, it's an old hazardous waste site, old industrial site that they're trying to redevelop. And we're doing the wastewater capacity issues. And they've got another grant that they hired a firm to do the marketing studies. What's viable? You're talking about brew pub, or you're talking apartments, or restaurants, what's makes sense. Um, and, so, so that's, uh, I was impressed that, you guys have your arms around it. This National Grid lot, the Village Business District, in my opinion, is a low hanging fruit that could be implemented, tomorrow. Not that hard to get, and it's not that much money, and it could be, and it could be done with all local permits. Don't need to get DEP. Now, the reports propose a groundwater discharge system, which requires DEP, and as you may know, is expensive. You're gonna spend easy $7,500,000 just to do the studies that need to be done to even be considered. Okay, if you say under 10,000 gallons a day, it's a Title V system. So, and frankly, there's no reason for it to be over 10,000 gallons. Okay, So-
Even with restaurant use downtown,
well, you're gonna be
Restaurants.
within limits.
yeah, restaurants use a lot of water.
Well, but again, if you look at the table that shows the flows.
Yeah.
The flows for there is 10,950 gallons per day for, I forget the exact numbers, but of the developed and the undeveloped properties.
Okay,
Well, knock one of them off, I can get it onto that. So, so, and so it was pushed through a ground, you don't wanna do a groundwater. I mean, you don't have. If you wanna do something quick, and my urgent to you on that, because we've done a lot of these projects, you need to show success. You need to prove that you really know, and how do I say this? You gotta demonstrate that you know what you're doing, and not you, but that the team, the group that's doing this, that they know how to make it happen. Okay,
but the downtown one, for me at least, that's not gonna solve our revenue problem.
that's what,
That's not gonna solve our revenue problem.
no, I get
We
it,
need,
no, I get it, well,
$150 million.
let me say
Yeah,
it's psychological,
Yeah.
number one.
yeah,
To start.
And it's a start, and you will help, I mean, you will get improvement. I mean, I looked at it, and it needs economic
oh, sure, absolutely.
So and the beauty of the recommendation is, and it's digestible. It's easily digestible to get,
That property is available like $275,000 or something like that.
and that's where you get a one-stop grant.
Is what they want for it.
You could get a heavy percent of that in a grant.
Who else is making offers?
Nobody, but
Well,
$1,000.
Yeah, when you said eminent domain, that's what I got. Thought.
yeah,
If you push comes to shove,
They've been unwilling to negotiate. We tried that at one point and got nowhere, but you're right. I mean, there are other ways to attack that, I guess. And there's rumored hazardous materials in there. There used to be a substation there that exploded in 1950s.
I've done a lot of work in the hazardous waste business,
Yeah.
and it's solid.
Yeah, oh yeah, with
It's-
money.
At the end of the day, it's money. So, and frankly, the site we're doing in Westport has been quote clean.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
and if it's a gas station, those are pretty well known, matter of fact. There's nothing that hard with fixing that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take that long.
Now, there used to be a gas station there that they built on now, so they've taken care of that part of it.
Exactly, yeah. So, I don't expect any hazardous material. I'll be surprised, okay?
Yeah.
If it's an insurmountable problem. And again, the beauty of it is it's digestible, and that goes right to the top of the list to go for a grant. Okay, so that's my recommendation. The schools have typically unused excess capacity because and we've done now a number of schools, the design flows of those schools were the old rules, if you will. Now, the one in Westford, it's 24,000 gallons a day that it's designed and permitted for. Their actual flow, if I remember right, it was 5,000 gallons. So you've got quote free capacity that's available. not unusual at schools. We've seen that. We're doing Holliston. They got a 32,000 gallon a day permit. The average is 5,600. Yeah, so, the goal in Holliston is to take that excess capacity and sewer them downtown. And, because they're crying for sewers to have some economic vitality. Okay, so, and then I call it the unused wastewater treatment plants. And, can't remember the exact name, but the property is at 33 School Street.
Yeah, up near Newton Street, Tony Kwan's property.
You know the property.
Yeah.
The gentleman that
And he has
Is-
65,000
Tony Kwan?
gallons a day there. capacity.
Sean.
Yeah,
Yeah. Tony
Kwan,
Kwan, yeah.
KWAN. Yeah.
So to me, that's another very low hanging fruit.
Hey, Brian, do you know the capacity of the Woodward system? Is there excess capacity there with this building? They tied into that somehow. I don't know. what
I
the design
don't
for that
know.
was.
I do know that the leach field and maybe part of the system is on the golf course. I don't know the
I
capacity.
mean, if in fact that has a modest amount of excess capacity, it's right next to downtown. That could be an interesting
Right.
connection there. Actually, hadn't thought of that.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
I think you know, for the time being, you should assume that each school should have some. The exact amount is frankly not that hard to figure out. They're just gonna go to the records.
Yeah.
And compare it to the permit. And figure it out. And then what we do on schools is you put in an equalization tank up front. Because, they're really a 5-day-a-week operation, whereas you smooth it over 7 days. So you get more capacity, you squeeze out a little more capacity by doing that. Okay. So those are quote, I call them the pearls. Okay. The other comment that I wanted to make was about technology. Okay. Many people are in the projects not always, but many times focus on the treatment plant. Because it's somewhat, hate to say it's quote sexy, but it's sizzle, it's got more sizzle, whereas sewers are a little more perceived mundane, et cetera. That's not usually where the action is in terms of cost and cost saving opportunities. So what I did here, I added this table, it's not in the report, but I took the information that's in the report. There's a summary of the Weston Sampson estimates. Okay, so sewer costs as a percent of the total, on the average there is a healthy percent. Yeah, it's not insignificant. Okay, and our experience is that it's very common that it's a significant, usually it's our experience 50 to 75% of the cost of the system, and that alternative sewers are typically significantly lower cost. And that's why we advocate for, and versus conventional system. And then this does not include.
So when you say alternative,
Should they?
what do you mean when you say an
Okay,
alternative?
that's a good
sewer?
question. Now, the alternative sewer systems are typical, they're either gonna be grinder pump. Or we have is what we would call septic tank effluent system. So the septic tank is either remains on the property and the liquid goes to the treatment plant. Okay. And what that does, you're now just transporting liquid. The pipes can be at a, less grade and shallow. Whereas condensed, and they're higher, they're not as deep. And when you start talking about groundwater and bedrock, huge problem. Okay, so now whether it's a septic tank effluent gravity or a septic tank effluent pump system, that's dictated by topography system. So and whether you can salvage the existing septic tanks or not is, not a big deal. You can or you don't. one of the advantages of that approach is that basically we go and hook everybody up right to the property line. The property owner doesn't really have to do much of anything to, they, with the typical sewer system, conventional sewers, let me call it, put it in the street, you're on your own, go connect, and you gotta pay 5, 10 grand. And the other factor that's significant is, when we do the alternatives, is that we're typically off the road. Okay? It's a huge fact, and because these projects turn easily into road restoration projects. Once you get into the road, you're not gonna be allowed to just patch it. You're gonna have to do a full course. You just double the triple cost of the project. Okay? It's not a sewer project, it's a road project. Okay, so those are the factors that are the basis for that. The other one is example for conventional systems. One of the big costs for it is manholes. Okay, and we don't use manholes in septic tank effluent systems. We use cleanups. Big difference. $800 versus $7,000. Okay, you start adding those up, there's where you're saving some. And the fact that we connect the property, obviously the homeowners are happy. They don't have to do it.
Now, who maintains
The system
the septic tank? Is that now?
that is considered, good question. Think of it this way, the septic tank, from the septic tank onward is part of the community system. Okay? And you don't rely on the property owner to do anything.
Okay.
And and you get an easement. And then one of the things, for instance, on the easements is, if the surveyors get involved, they don't want to survey at all. Okay, cost a fortune. Okay, you don't do it then. We do blanket easement. So you do a blanket easement, it's easy. And we've done 8,000. So, and I can't remember anybody being didn't want to sign. The drip irrigation, I wanted to share with you, is a year-round solution. It is not a seasonal solution. Okay. It can be a shade zone if you want, but it's in the wastewater business, it's year-round.
How's that work? I mean, how deep is the drip pipe?
1 foot below grade.
And so that freezes though.
No.
That-
And the reason it doesn't freeze, well, and give you some references, we've got one in Sudbury that's been there for 4 years now. Okay. And there's one that frankly that was put up in Maine for municipality that operate. The reason why is the drips are always draining. They don't hold water more than time during the cycle that they're discharging. Okay, and then they gets released. So and I know somebody said that last time, they're warm, the water's warm. So that's, at the end of the day, it's not a problem.
Wow, it's interesting.
They're permanent in Massachusetts.
As you point out here, the golf course, actually, our golf course has a conservation restriction on it. That it allows irrigation, but not clear exactly what that means. So that would take some discussion to figure out if that's permitted or not. But
Well, let's obviously one can try to, be wise and it's illegal.
yeah,
Is it potato or is it potato? So naturally we'll just say it is part of the irrigation because it is.
Yeah.
It is. So, but if it is, that would be great.
Yep.
Because to me, that's a huge, you want to talk about, now you got something.
green system.
When you go to talk to others, you got something to give. You own something. You don't have any, you gotta, you don't.
So Brian had sort of disputed, I'm familiar with drip irrigation in agriculture, but not wastewater.
Right.
And we're still talking about having to have, you know, a gravel bed underneath that sort of thing, no? Because
No.
if we can do it in the golf course without disturbing, having major disturbances of the golf course.
That's right.
That
Just
would
like
be,
the irrigation system, when I put an irrigation system, they had a machine that sliced the ground and popped a tube in there. and
Yeah, there's no.
Couldn't even see where it had been, yeah.
I wanted to.
is there a place where we can see one of those?
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to go to Sudbury, I mean, it's right there. And then, you know,
Well, I think Bob was saying Madison Place has.
Yeah.
Irrigation.
yeah, I mean, it's,
They, you know, they brought in, you know, tons. So the question, this would be a much easier sale for using the golf course. If we say, you know, we're making a slit, we're covering it back up and,
yeah,
you know, you'll be
First
able
of
to
all,
play tomorrow.
I can assure you, there's no, I wouldn't be, I mean, I was ready for this. So, as well as, we know that the drip people, the suppliers of.
Yeah.
And they've been around for 40, 50 years for wastewater.
Okay,
And so, and so there's hundreds of applications, not a problem. And at the end of the day, it's permit, it's on the list. We didn't have to get a special permit to do it here. So you've got their DEP approved.
okay.
Yeah, I would just say,
Mhm.
take it on your own.
Uh,
You don't need,
all right.
yeah. And you don't need any of that stone and all of that stuff. No. What drives the design is the soil
Sure.
and how quickly they'll drain. That's how the system is sized. Okay. So, not sure why they were required to do it, but any of them. So, and then regarding the deal, you know, the highway properties that you were bringing up now, the main issue there when we've been involved in those, because I mean, I thought it was brilliant in terms of, yeah, look at that, is how do you get access for maintenance purposes? So that's gonna be,
Yeah.
you know, one has to know, at least have a, let me call it a conceptual plan.
Yeah, which physically that actually could happen for Claire, Brian and Alan. I actually had a chance to be in a meeting yesterday, I guess, with my MassDOT contact who told me that he actually has been talking to people at the MassDOT real estate area. He's had several conversations, he said, and they're working on some additional material there, which I actually found pretty encouraging. My expectation was he was going to come back and say, no way it's going to ever happen. And he still may do that, but at least I was mildly encouraged. He's actually on vacation now in the next week. He said he would check back with me for the end of next week when he gets back. We'll see what happens, but
Well, like most things, you know, is location.
Yeah.
Location.
And that
If
was
it's the right location.
and they do have, MassDOT does have a real estate office. I can't remember the title of it, but they got people who actually work to lease MassDOT property to commercial users and generate revenue for MassDOT. So
Mhm.
we would want a freebie, of course, but at least if they do that conceptually, that's a head start. So long way to go, but at least encouraging somewhat.
So but you know, as you can see, and I'll go through this in a little more detail, you've got some assets, they call them, and some of them are well-defined, if you will. Some of them should be good, like the golf course, but you can still, you know, the big issue of the golf course, let's assume there's no legal issue, gotta do test pits all over the place. And there's gotta be a groundwater hydrogeo study of the area to define its capacity. That's easy, $200,000 just to do that. Okay, so, and that's one, you know, I put in there generically hydrogeo studies, but you're talking money. Because you gotta put in wells. And you gotta do the test pits. And you gotta have hydrogeologists doing the mounding analysis. So now you're talking mod flow and then now you gotta deal with Bruce Bout at DEP and get involved because they gotta sign off. And actually, the effluent's gonna go into the reservoir. So quality control is a big deal. So, but any event, so that So what I did on this slide here is I tried to pull out, again, those quote, either pearls or information that provides context. Or what's this all about? Okay, so the top left one really provides the flows. Okay, so in terms of what's permitted today and what's the build out projection, and then and I separated out the one at Park Central that's on the north side there over side. And that one, I'm not sure why, but it seems to be in abeyance for whatever reason. So and then if I remember right, it was proposed that the initial phase would be like 150,000 gallons a day. Okay, so additional pump. And then on the right there, table 1.3, was some of the groundwater discharges that have excess capacity or not even being operated. And obviously the Tony Kwan property jumps right up. And all of a sudden, it's got round numbers, you got 50,000 gallons a day of capacity there. It's not insignificant. And then again, Park Central. And the Kwan property even has a treatment plant there. So doesn't seem like it should be a big, to upgrade that. So in that situation, and I thought that would be the case in a number of them, is that don't need to build a new treatment plant, really just need to upgrade and expand what's there. So you're gonna salvage the asset that's already there. You're not gonna abandon it. Okay, there's no reason to. I mean, if you want to save money, that's one way. And then that table 1.4 is the other groundwater discharge systems that are active in some of them has the well, a good number of we don't have the data on what their size is, etc. Okay, that's where the schools are naturally, and then we were talking about the Dell office buildings, etc. So, but they have to have a treatment plant there. Okay, so and they must have a disposal system there. So,
And they're talking to Westboro about looking in
oh, they were
there. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I think
Although
actually,
Westboro doesn't have any capacity. So
I think when we spoke to them, the existing buildings are connected to Westboro.
okay, well,
at least some of them are,
Yeah.
not totally clear to me.
right.
But
The
that's
part-
their first choice.
well,
if they
Yeah,
can.
now that you mentioned, I think Claire, you were saying that when we were doing, but the one of the issues that sort of jumped at me is that it's a fair amount of open land. Now, how can that be utilized?
Yep.
Then is so any event. So to me, this is a condensing of really sort of I'm gonna again try to the real pearls, if you will. This is what you own, and then Western Sempton prepared a map that really shows geographically where they're located. And what we did in our layouts is, one option, especially if we start talking about the central area, is to have a loop. If one wants to do a wastewater community system, not unreasonable to envision that having a loop around that. But that's just concept. Do the numbers pan out for that? Well, we'll see. All right, so the next one here, this is the village business district area. And if you look over to the middle table there, you'll see developed flow is 8430, undeveloped flow 22. The total is 10,692. I would, one way you deal with this is you just go restrict the undeveloped flow, if you will.
Yeah.
Just trim it a little bit. Bingo, you're there. This thing can be implemented right away and provide some economic vitality to that area and addresses wastewater issues with some of the properties. Now, maybe some of those developed flows don't connect to that as well. So there's different way to slice that issue that could make that's sort of like a mini cluster system. So that, again, it's just to demonstrate abilities to make success and make things happen. Well, to me, I think that one has a lot of it. In the large projects we've done, the wisdom always was get something built ASAP. Okay, don't spend 4 or 5 years just spending money on studies and then 2 years of design before you go to construction. And then when the bids come in, all hell breaks loose because they're much higher than what was anticipated. Okay, that starting happens quite often. So, my prioritized recommendations to you is, I would urge you to decide on a project engineer record. You have so many things that need to be done that you really want to have, let me say, a project engineer record that's got, that's the rudder, if you will, and running the show in term. And then, by the way, you don't have a lot of money to really spend. So I don't know, there's not a lot of zeros. Or there may be, but there's no digit above zero.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Zero is our bank balance.
yeah. So until you have, quote, money, this is all still an idea. And I would urge you to go to the town meeting in the fall for the CWMP. It's not going to achieve with all due respect, I do not think it'll achieve the objective of getting the tax revenue as
Right,
quickly,
yeah.
because it's going to take a fair amount of time.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it's not inexpensive to do the CWMP. As well as I was saying earlier, sorry if I repeat something, but you need to go backwards. Okay, you already got a good number of the pieces of the puzzle. The bottom line is, what's your disposal capacity that you can basically, I'm going to call it, quote, sell, or that's what the town contributes to whatever's going to happen. And then I tried to, and Claire and I have been going back and forth over the past, because what happened, after we did the work, nothing happened. But since you all sort of jumped, came in, and then she and I have been talking because, town's ready to move. So God bless.
The stately face of government.
I'll get that. Yeah. So in terms of the projects, I tried to, my recommendation, these 4, and obviously can be modified or substituted. The hydrogeo studies, and that's not insignificant. The land use plan, the root collar, but in that regard, I think the town would value from having a professional firm supporting your efforts to work with these developers. Yeah. And that's, again, that's what the money's used for. And I don't know if you're all here, but in Westford, where we're working now, that's what they've done. So they have us working in I call it marketing firm to figure out what's achievable. Who can they get to build whatever. Again, the village business district project again, I think you can implement that pretty quick. I think you could have something, not reasonable to have something operational within 2, no more than 3 years. Sure. And then regarding the CWMP, I would also urge you to think about phased implementation. Okay? What we've done, for instance, what we did years ago in Maryland, which is one of our larger projects, in today's dollars, it's close to $150 million. And that was over basically close to 10 years. To be complete. Yeah, and we broke the project into multiple phases. Just, you know, you don't want to build everything at once, especially, you know, you got to time things correctly. You don't want to spend a lot of money on a treatment plant unless the sewers are ready to connect and all that stuff. You know, again, cash flow positive is here. So those are our recommendations. I have a series of slides here just to, you know, show you more about who we are, what we've done. I'll just be real fast. But I'd rather, because I want to get to the questions that you know, may have. And but you know, we have a very strong relationship with DEP local here in Worcester. I encourage you to speak to Dan Kropatska or even the regional administrator. And we've been working with them.
We did speak to Dan.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a teachable guy.
Yeah, he was very helpful.
Yeah, he's not what you would expect
Yeah.
as a bureaucrat.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very kinesthetic, let me say.
Yeah.
And so, and we've worked with him frankly out in Springfield when he was there. And we did a project, we turned around a failing system. We've been engineering for over $250 million projects, public and private. We've been honored with engineering excellence awards, and that was designated a candidate for ENR. And we've been doing comprehensive wastewater planning since 1976. And we've written many manuals for EPA on this. Okay, and basically, what the genesis of that was back in those days. Again, the 77 Act really was part of the impetus for that. Was what do you do what does a community do and if they don't want the conventional? So, okay, so we developed very detailed methodologies on how to do that. And we've done a lot of, I like financing, and because I know the money is gonna, you know, dictate what's really gonna happen. So we've done many engineer letters for, you know, bonding, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, I've had a practice for a good 50 years, and I grew it to 55 people back in the 80s. And sold it to, acquired by Dames and Moore, if you remember them. They were there was 3 international, you know, engineering and high firms, and then, you know, I reestablished practice back in '96. But what do you call it? And I spent a number of years in corporate positions, and the one that's relevant to some of the work you did, Al, was privatization. So I was on the private sector side for privatizations and did that for a number of years for Wheelabrator. And I don't know if you all were familiar with Wheelabrator. You may remember them solid waste.
Yeah.
But Wheelabrator was part of Waste Management. And in the 90s, they had a ton of money from Waste Management and sort of, I'm going to call it speculating or gambling, to be the consolidator in the water industry and to do the same thing they did with solid waste, but to do it in water or wastewater. So that was my job in terms of making those deals happen. But like you
we
said,
had a conversation with Veolia.
Yeah.
Who manages the
The French,
Westboro plant.
Yeah.
And I think we'd be quite interested in figuring out, you know, if there's a viable private solution. But we'd love to hear a lot more about that to see if, you know, that obviously doesn't fit the town's bonding capacity and things like that.
well, I would be a little tempered on the whole privatization. At the end of the day, they do it to make money. The private, it's not attractive, in my opinion, it's not attractive. Okay? Because, I mean, they'll be happy to come in and do it and know that you're gonna pay. And you don't have any customers yet. And so that front end effort, are they gonna do that at risk? Now, we did. I mean, when I was doing this, the company would spend $500,000 to pursue a project. Okay? But you've got legal issues, and what's his name, Son Pacheco has a law in Massachusetts that is not friendly to this. So, and the attractiveness, you don't have the assets yet. So, privatization is easiest done when there's assets there, and you're then going to improve it. And you come in and you can do it at a much more efficient way than the municipality can, or whoever's running it, because you have special expertise, so you can bring in economies of scale. You're really looking for help from the privatization, and I just don't see why they would do it. I mean, at the end of the day, their rule is, and I'm sure you know, their rule is going to be, it's got to be, better have an ROI of at least 20%. Otherwise, we're not looking.
That was the magic number we had heard.
No incentive to buy. Yeah. And
Doesn't make money, they're not gonna do it.
it's better than 35% that private equity is going to require. So, and so I would not, I would urge you not to expect much there. If it comes by, wonderful. Then consider. I just don't see it how it would. And when you do when one does let me call it the financial plan, I'm just going to tell you, you need outside funding of this to get to the competitive rate. Well, that outside funding either going to come from, what do you call it, an outside grant, or what I'm going to show you, we did this, I was involved as the chief engineer of Pawtucket, where the privatization of the improvement was 50% lower than what the routine was of the design build, basically, versus design bid build separately. Okay, and we came in at half the price. So, but again, that was an existing treatment plant. There was some expansion, and there was something to work with. And I can tell you, it's a brutal business. The margins and the salespeople are great at trying to sell. The operators that take over hate them, because how am I supposed to make money on this thing? You guys, so, the margins are very lean.
There aren't any companies that will design, build, implement, and then service all as one.
Sure, I mean, frankly,
Yeah,
we
we
do
heard there are, yeah.
design, bid, build.
So then I would think then you would eliminate that issue that you just mentioned of someone building it and then handing it off to someone else and having to sort of manage someone else's project. It's their own project.
Oh, yeah. No. No, what I'm using, first of all, what I was trying to emphasize there, so I hope I was being clear, is that the design bid build process is the old standard technique that in some cases is still done. Okay. And what happened in that one, it was a pure design build. Okay. And operate. Okay. So, and what it really is saying is that the design build process saves, as a general rule of thumb in the industry, easy 25%. Because for a whole group, and I'm sure you're familiar. Okay. So in that case, it was 50. Now, you don't have something to bench. You don't have a benchmark. What are we designing? What are we building? Okay. And so no. So again, respectfully, in my professional opinion, I don't see how it fits in yet. Now, it may come about, but I just don't see it. Now, how it would work, you could say, okay, the VHB, not the VHB, but the Village Business Group, the Village's product. You could flip that into a, design build, say, operate project. But one has to do the planning for that and get permits for it. So that when they come in, they just design it and build it. Okay. And so that's the way to get the least cost. Okay. Now, is it gonna make it affordable? That's a totally different question. And my general feeling, no, don't expect it. It's not gonna. You're not gonna. I'd be surprised.
Are there people whose expertise is sort of in the financial planning side of this, in terms of, trying to build a model of what a plant looks like to operate and to take the capital, At some point, there's a big spreadsheet.
Right.
Is that something that comes with the design build process, or is that somebody separate? There's somebody sort of a separate expertise.
No, no, that's the financial analysis that I think you're referring to is separate from that. Okay, that's more part of, I'm going to call it project management and sort of conceptualization, and it's, if you will, it's what we did when we would produce engineer letters for bonding. Okay, what the objective of those letters is to show to the bondholders that they're going to be repaid. Okay, and one goes through a very rigorous process of technical and then financial, and we do pro formas that show, and you basically show the bondholders that they're going to get repaid, and one then sort of complies with certain rules in the trade. For instance, you have to have your revenue, you need to have at least 125% of debt payments. You need to have at least 1 year of debt service in the bank, et cetera, et cetera. So, and when you do that, your bonding cost goes down significantly. And that's what I was involved with. On a number of them, we were able to do the analysis that your rating goes up, because don't worry about being paid, folks. This is a AAA bonded thing. And frankly, those things go to AMBAC or companies like that provide the insurance for the bond.
Yeah.
So AMBAC, I would, my short answer would be, yeah, I mean, we do that. And we've done, I mean, we frankly do that as part of our, to me, that's part of CWRP, is one has to have financing play. Okay. So anyway, let me just go quick through the others and then I will open it up. But we've worked in many states and very prestigious clients and that were undevelopable, and we were able to figure out how to get them to be developed. Okay, in Malibu and New York, out in the Hamptons, etc. These are the manuals that we've written for EPA. And what I really wanted to show you here is that we've been doing this planning or CWMP since frankly 1980. Well, that's when they were published. We started actually before that, and every 10 years, it seems there's been a rejuvenation of interest in that. So we back in, and then very importantly, in early 2000s, we were competitively selected on a national project to write what's called a clusters wastewater system. And what's being proposed in the town is what we call cluster system. That you're looking at 3 different areas, etc. And those And so the manual describes how one figures out what to do where. Okay, and then we were involved with, I wrote one of the chapters on alternative sewers. So, and guide this is how do you figure out what to do where? We've done back in over 10 years ago, we did a CWMP for the town of East Hampton. And we did Holliston, a CWMP for them back in 1980s. This project here in Southampton, we have a net positive nitrogen removal and we're taking out more nitrogen than even is being discharged. Now nitrogen's a big deal in the coastal areas. In this one, for instance, in Malibu, we did a project where there was no discharge. We used all the water consumptively, but we're in the desert. So irrigation demand took care of that. And then, we've done Ipswich conventional system. Yeah. And then I want to point this one in Pawtucket, that's the public-private partnership. And this is when we're on the public sector side. So I was the chief engineer for the city for this project. Okay. So we managed it and identified it. And so we both work on the public and the private side. And then this cluster manual that describes not only how one does it, but presents a lot of examples of what we've done on CWMPs. One of them, this is right next to Annapolis, Annapolis, Maryland. There's the one we did in Concord, Mass, back in the early 2000s as well. And then we practice in a wide range of applications. In CWMP, we're doing it towns like Southborough, there's septic systems that need to be addressed. And then there may be, look at this as an example of, well, this is Frank was a 40B development. And here was the wastewater system that served the 40B development, and we put it under the parking lot. So you don't even know it's there. Okay. So that's one of the things we do. And we know nobody really wants to know about the wastewater system.
What's the capacity of this one?
That one was, I want to say 8,000 gallons a day, something like that. It was about 40 houses.
Under 10.
Yeah. And Title V. So that's comparable. That's sort of like the village business district kind of application.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we did a big shopping center in Malibu, very controversial. And what we did there, was we produced reuse water, okay, that met reuse standards. And that other project that I said there was no discharge, we got permitted by the California Department of Health, and we were to achieve what's called the Title 22 reuse standard, which is the gold standard in the industry for water reuse. And the title is unrestricted non-potable water reuse. Or we can use the water for anything except potable. Unrestricted. So, we've done communities in Woodstock, New York, frankly, 40 years ago. And then this is a list of the CWMP communities that we've done and some of the private projects. And then lastly, I just wanted this is from the cluster manual. This shows the planning process. This is how one does a CWMP. Okay. So you basically go through that vertically. Okay. And then you'll see, very importantly, on the right hand, the typical challenges. Okay. soils and hydrogeo. Big deal. Growth management. Back in those days, there was, no shortage, or and what we would do is show people how to manage. And we worked frankly with the planning firms. We integrated things. So we basically did spell the fears that unbridled growth would happen. Yeah. So those are that, and then the next slides just show the very detail that's done, that's the part of the CWMP. All right. So I won't go through this, and I don't, happy to do it, but it's a very detailed process. Okay, because what we're doing here is lot by lot. So we would speak to every property owner about what was going on in their property, were they okay, and if not, why, and what needs to be done. So there's a heavy public engagement, which we like, because we knew at the end of the day, they're our client. And if anything's gonna happen, they gotta approve. So, and you folks as selectmen, obviously, know, that. So thank you for your attention on that. I wanted to circle back then to, the, what do you call it? To the action plan, and we picked that word because you don't need a study. Okay, and our professional, you really need to pull off action. Because you've got six.
I cheated. I had to tell him that Al Hamilton at a meeting one time said, I've seen enough studies. I want to see shovels in the ground. So essentially, I said, we've studied the thing to death. We've got every kind of study you need. So what we need now is just, what's the plan?
Well, and to that point, and you've heard this before, the money's for construction. If you show that the real objective is to build something, yeah, you'll get some study money, maybe. But if there's,
Either source of, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is, what are the potentials for finding funding that doesn't hit our property tax rate? I mean, I know that there's probably not much coming from the feds these days. Are there other sources of funding? Get people to help chip in on this?
well, I mean, when you say that, you're really talking about federal money. In state.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in state. And the state, you're really talking a one-stop program. The state does have a healthy amount of money that comes from the feds, and there's matching, I call it, I'm dating myself, what's called the construction grants program. Okay, where to get that money, you have to have an approved CWMP.
Yeah.
Okay, but I would urge him. I don't think it's wise to chase them. Yeah. You're not, now, it's not to say, and obviously one has to turn over every stone. And all you need is one good luck. All you need is one brass ring. But they don't jump out. There's not a program. There used to be. There's not something, oh yeah, just apply for this. And you can get all of these, and there used to be. And now, and a lot of money came from IRA, the IRA, that's how Holliston took some of their IRA money and said dedicated to upgrading the treatment plant, and they funded, but that's all been spent.
Is that ARPA money that you're talking about?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I said it, so.
Okay.
So,
we spent ours.
yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of, so, but there's no money left, and there's no new money.
What value is there in terms of getting money for a regional project? For example, one of the things we've talked about is building, several million gallon a day plant to have shared capacity with Westboro, Marlboro, And those in turn spread out to Northborough, Hopkinton, Shrewsbury, et cetera, their service area. That's a much longer term deal, but having multiple players in there, we've heard, makes it more likely you're going to get some money.
Well, conceptually, you
Yeah,
know, it sounds good.
but that's 10 years out or something like that, or
And
whatever.
there's a lot of black holes
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah.
And, and, you know, one of the challenges with regionalization is who's in charge?
Yeah. Okay.
And, my comment to it's clear when I heard this, you know, good luck on getting, you'll be herding cats, number one. And a lot of egos. The way that those work is you have a anchor, if you will, owner, and there's an intermunicipal agreement.
Yeah.
Okay, because you sure as, I don't think you want a board of multiple communities.
Right.
In charge. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Right, but the way the ones that are regional are typically gonna be intermunicipal agreements.
Yeah.
So they bought capacity, and they paid for it, and
But somebody clearly is in charge.
and they have a lot of, you know, as you can imagine. My attitude would be, if you can, I was saying, boy, if you can configure something or you have something that could be done, you're gonna wanna use it all yourself.
Yeah.
And, but I don't think you're gonna find, you're not, I'd be surprised if Singapore is gonna have a lot more they wanna let go to somebody else.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised.
Certainly
And the
not.
data's, where?
I mean, in theory, we could build a plant that has, you know, a couple billion gallons a day or whatever out there,
Remember, we're gonna dispose,
groundwater discharge.
where?
Yeah.
Well, for example, Park Central property is potential.
100,000 gallons of that problem, max.
You think so?
Wow.
Well, Sam is thinking about building a new discharge field.
The hydrogeo conditions will dictate
Yeah.
the
They've
capacity.
got 90 acres there. There's 30 acres between lanes on 495, for example. And Dell property,
We did look at that.
yeah, Dell
And
property.
that
has
does have merit,
60 acres down there.
but you gotta plan on spending at least $300,000 to do the hydrogeo.
Yeah.
And you gotta be prepared for them to say, no.
And I think whatever, you know, you had mentioned time frame earlier. And I think that was just Southborough focused.
Right.
That is gonna grow exponentially
Right.
if you've got
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
the other
Yeah,
part
I don't,
involved as well.
I'd be surprised. I mean, I think, well, you don't have any money to launch,
Right.
right? You don't have any, quote, developer money.
We're painfully aware of that.
Yeah, you don't have, and you've got a lot of things that you've assumed it'll work, no. And to find out, you're gonna spend a lot of money. And you hit the wall, the hydrogeo, I can assure you, is, there's a lot, it's what defines the property's capacity.
You know. Earlier slide had mentioned that, you know, town doesn't own much on Route 9, and the initial focus, I think, for our group is Route 9 and expanding the tax base, so. Like, I'm wondering, is there an opportunity for some public-private partnership arrangement
Right.
where, again, meeting with the groups that own and just. As an argument from the Westboro line east a certain distance.
Right.
Money that we otherwise would have invested in a CWMP, do we invest that in a hydrogeo study for the golf course? And go to the table and say, look, you know, we've got solution to discharge X. What can we work out with you to help, you know, build a plant? Who can, you know, come up with land for a plant? And we can talk about the infrastructure to connect the plant to our resources, but this is what we can bring to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that goes, I appreciate you saying that, that just goes back to the first thing. You need to know what is your hydrogeo capacity.
Yeah.
And because for discussion purposes, yeah, water use is a great thing, but not even that.
And we have had a couple of developers say, with the septic capacity, that dramatically leverages the value of my property. I can
Yeah.
build bigger and have more value on that property, so it's worth it to me to some degree at least, not totally clear. So people are interested in playing there.
Well, I like what you're all saying because. Again, looking at it just as a business person. So I would say. Get those folks, and I know that's what you've been doing. Get them together and hash it out. Basically, what do you really want? In terms of what can you use and what's worth it to you? And then come back, how do we go satisfy that? And the dream, we ain't gonna satisfy that. Or, oh yeah, we can do that. And by the way, and then if you go back to the list. On Quanspot, you've got golf course, you've got a few things. But that's really, because beyond that, you don't have, with all, I don't want, how to say it
No,
nicely.
no,
You know what I mean?
We don't have
we,
any
we,
cards.
we know we don't have.
Right. So,
It's a
you
lot.
don't have a pot, if you will.
No,
But absent something like that, I mean, where I wind up is that we get back to what I think you'd suggested way back when was we wind up with a series of small, under 10,000 gallons a day
But you're not gonna, no,
in various places.
you
which is
will,
Not too satisfying.
excuse me, Dan. Ultimately, in my opinion, you're gonna end up with a series of, well, modular or decentralized unit clutch systems.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, and I used to say, the real business of a CWMP is to figure out what's the optimal solution. Okay, that's really what a CWMP, and that's the financial analysis that comes in, do present worth analysis, blah, blah, blah.
so, I think what you're suggesting is, so we have a one-stop expression of interest, which is due next week.
Right.
And that what you're suggesting is that we should focus that on site and the hydrological capacities of those sites.
Get money to do that.
You get money to do that,
Get money to do the
So,
marketing study.
if you can switch over to me, I can bring that up. Okay, so just a couple things,
by the way,
This is it.
would
This
you
is
be
what-
willing to share those slides with us?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great.
I mean, and, but I can't do much more.
Yeah.
Understand.
All
So,
right.
so I mean, obviously, we're very interested to be a service to the town. So, and, I'm very hopeful for it. Cause your asset is Route 9.
Right.
And it's obviously something should be done. So the willingness to do something is huge.
Well, Route 9 is a real economic asset in
Oh,
terms of
totally.
transportation locations, et
Yeah,
cetera.
so you've got, that to me is now,
Attract businesses to locate there if we can.
right, right. And then I know the other piece of it that Claire and the other elephant in the room is the zoning. Okay? And so, but for these pieces that come together and stay glued, now we're talking about a business thing. And that's gonna take a lot of talking around, going back and forth, et cetera. But you're gonna have to have reliable data. Because otherwise, but then you just BS them.
Yeah.
Without reliable data and say, we can deliver this.
Yeah.
It's not, they're being courteous.
And so our near-term pressure is the EOI, get the right language in there broad enough that we can actually hopefully get some money to do the starting steps here. And what we're told, I think, is that you don't have to be too specific with that.
Yeah,
Really
my
general.
expectation is that you would rank very high on these things. Cause I think from the state's perspective, this is all about economic development. Okay?
Yeah.
This is a growth facilitator program, which, and these things are things that they fund and they're very smart in that program. If you look, they know how things happen.
Yeah, Al, is the EOI really just a 500 character or 500 word
It's 500 characters.
500
I've drafted it up.
But is that all that, that's the only thing you have to
Yeah,
say?
there's some,
It's a part, I've got the whole application.
yeah,
when you
did we
switch
switch
over
over
to
to
me.
Claire?
Just,
Tried to.
yeah, you did switch over?
I
Right.
tried to make you
Right.
panelists, you have to accept it.
Okay, want me to stop?
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So just before I do this, a couple things is, I'm trying to get over, and this was a little bit, and I'll only take a minute to do this. This was at the end of the last meeting. Okay? This whole project is your goal as selectmen is to solve the issue of the financials. It's what you put in the first couple slides. I'm just stealing all this from your
Steal
presentation.
away.
Okay, Al gave, and I'm assuming everybody's seen it, okay? He gave an excellent introduction into what the town's problem is. This is the problem that you guys are trying to solve, okay? So it's the overall thing. As three components underneath that, you have wastewater, zoning, and you probably have a traffic component too on that in terms of what has to get done, okay? What I want to make sure, and I'll cover my conversation with Rob Anderson today, but what I want to make sure is that you understand as the wastewater part of it, you need to have, Pio calls it an engineer of record or whatever, to handle all the stuff that he showed you in that presentation. The second part of it is the whole zoning thing. We all know the town cannot get the zoning out in a sequential, I can sit down, in a sequential time frame. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah.
It's in a time frame that runs parallel with what the wastewater is happening. I have no, and I've learned a lot from him. I've learned a lot from Paul Pazinski. But the fact of the matter, what I do know is that at some point in time, what you need to do in terms of figuring out all of your technical analysis is what's going to be out there. What is the zoning going to allow for? Okay. And then you got the traffic part. So with that.
If I may interject, Claire, just to, underline support what you're saying. That, in my opinion, would be part of the marketing study and let me call it the negotiations with properties. Basically, you want them telling you, and you, I'm sure
What they can build.
What they want.
what revisions need to be made, planning, and you operate that way, rather than an academic exercise that maybe this feel good.
Get the data, as you said earlier.
And the data here is who wants to make a deal?
Yeah.
And right, because the data here is who wants to build something that the community is going to accept. And obviously provides more tax revenue.
And Alan will take care of the zoning.
Yeah.
As
Right.
new planning board member. Check.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was looking at the Google Earth and I was saying, traffic's gonna be a fact.
Isn't that MassDOT's problem though? For the most part.
I'll defer to.
That's gonna be a combination of the landowners and MassDOT.
Yeah.
Whoever is looking to redevelop a parcel.
Yeah.
Based on, a higher use, a better use they can
Yeah,
have, what
safety
traffic
factors.
is gonna be generated. Do you need to add a traffic light where one doesn't exist?
I was
now?
thinking exactly that on one of the intersections there that is not done with there's no traffic lights. Oh boy, this is gonna be. I think it's, yes,
Yeah.
so but it's clear that needs to be, but my expectation is that when you're getting into facilitating these things, that's gonna pop up, is the traffic and the zoning gonna pop up. Is that we're inhibited to make this, let's say, development plan happen.
Yeah.
Because of those barriers.
How many times have you
Wastewater,
seen,
presumably we solve.
How many times have you seen traffic lights and patterns change on Route 9 in Framingham and Natick with developments that they have
Yeah.
going on there? So that's all in conjunction with.
Right.
Mass DOT, so.
But that's usually what happens when we get on CWMP, and frankly, CWMP deals with existing development and future. Well, future here is the elephant. Is really the elephant, so we gotta define that.
Yeah.
And it's usually in the interim process.
Sure. Okay, so take it away, Claire.
Okay.
So what have you got?
Alan, you are muted. Oh, that's okay. Alan, how do I get my,
The bottom, you should see a share icon.
I just want to share my screen.
Yep, at the
Yeah.
bottom of your screen, you should see a share icon. Green.
At the bottom of my screen. Yes, okay, yes. Ah, there you
And
go.
then pick the
Okay.
window up.
Neither one of my pairs of glasses are working. Oh, okay, no, I don't need it. Okay, so the application itself. This is exactly what it looks like. These are the screen prints. This is all just regular standard kind of information. As far as I know, Vanessa is the only one who has access to the system to log on to it and fill it in. If you come down here, and these are just things that I plugged in, obviously I couldn't submit it. Here's the key thing where it says the project aspect. Abstract.
Abstract.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Is a concise description of what it is. A 500 character limit makes it very, very precise. Okay. You pick, and these are a couple things that I can run by. Well, it turns out now with the meeting on Monday afternoon with Rob Anderson, with
Mass development. This is this,
perfect timing. And I saw that it was posted as an actual meeting.
we need to talk about that. Yeah.
No, those are Rob.
District improvement financing. I don't know if you guys took a look at that link. I think I
Yeah.
sent it around.
That whole thing, just the timing
It-
could not be.
Interesting concept.
Ever.
There's no free money there, but in fact, it allows you to define a district wherever you want it. Create a baseline revenue, tax revenue number there, and then as new development occurs in there, you can actually allocate a portion of the additional tax revenue from your development activities to fund infrastructure. And so.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because I was that's what I use the category there, alternative financing.
Right, yeah,
But it's tax incremental financing
yeah,
that you can.
but it's not free money. It's tax revenue that you're gonna get that you can, at least as I understand it, you can redirect to infrastructure as opposed to putting it back into the general
The
fund.
challenge I saw with that is you really want that revenue to lower the tax.
Well, but you get an opportunity to do it.
At least we get to make a choice.
Right.
Let's talk about administratively here. Rob Anderson at Mass Development, as I think you guys know, resident, very helpful in terms of sort of inside view of how this stuff works. He is connected with the woman who actually is in charge of this district improvement financing program and has arranged for a phone call Monday afternoon with her. My theory was that it ought to be two of us doing that, so you don't have an open meeting kind of thing and have people chiming in from all over the place at this point. I see this as a very preliminary conversation to sort of understand the details of how it works and open the door to have a follow-on conversation later on. So I'm happy to do it, but I'm happy to defer to one of you guys. I think Al ought to do it. So,
We can have three.
And he's been updated that it's actually a posted meeting and he's going to include his partner at Mass Development on the call, Amanda Gregoire.
yeah, I don't think it ought to be a posted meeting. As
Well,
well.
I posted the meeting in case we wanted to, and because we got some deadlines we have
You
to
can
do.
just take it down if we go shoot down.
Yeah.
I can't make it anyway, so.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
sure.
only by Zoom, right? Yeah,
Well, Teams actually.
okay.
So,
So anyway, with that in mind, so there's several different options that you can pick. I just did the infrastructure to support new commercial and industrial development. These are the choices actually that you have on the application, but
Well, I think that's the right one.
that's what you want.
Oh, yeah.
But we want to give you
You
what
guys,
you
what do
want.
you think?
Okay, so here's the thing. what I did was I drafted up, and they just want you to go right to the chase. What's the money gonna be used for? What is your project? You have Route 9 development to begin addressing the tax revenue shortage. Lack of wastewater sewers is a major impediment to housing and commercial development. The next phase of the study, which in one-stop language is called the development continuum, and they are really big on that. They don't want any of these putting a project on the wall and throwing a dot at it and whoever gets it. They want to see that you've put in your money, you've taken advantage of grants that have been available, which we certainly have. We've got a history of that we can show them. The thing that we need now is, and I actually took it right, part of it right from PO's action plan. But the thing that we need, and you guys can all fill this in based on what we talked about tonight, is the next phase of the study is to determine site locations, flow capacity, and build out potential. There's probably a more engineering flavored term on that.
But, the categories down there sort of even encapsulate what we were just saying, is, what do you call it? Infrastructure is to support new commercial industrial development.
Yeah. I think, well, I would take the word housing out and replace it with industrial.
You mean in the
Commercial and
actual,
industrial,
Yes.
okay, I see what you're saying.
Commercial and industrial development. Yeah, I think.
It's a major to commercial,
Industrial.
and, okay.
Of course, you gotta count your characters, but.
So is this where we're the 500 characters?
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And that includes spaces.
And we are up to how many with that? Just
You
so I
had
can
to
get a
ask
sense.
that. you know?
To highlight it. and-
Yeah, you can, and I just can't figure it out.
It says word count.
If you go to
You
the
can
word
character count too. So highlight it first. Then the top menu right under the word thesaurus.
And then click on the where it says 43 of
Upper
85
left.
words.
Thesaurus?
Word count. Upper left screen, word,
Put word
down
count.
one,
Go down.
word count, you see
down
that?
one.
Oh, word count.
Yeah, click
Oh,
on that.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Oh, we got another,
Character.
No, characters.
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 we got
Okay,
another
so we still
192
have- we
characters.
still have-
There you go.
So I like your line that you could come up with. That we're the only town between Boston and Goshen, Mass. That does not have wastewater collection, but does not have a sewer system on Route
Municipal
9.
sewer system.
I would make that sentence number one.
Okay.
Okay, all right,
The other
yeah.
thing that Al, I asked you, I'm not sure if you have this, is how many of the towns along them are smaller than us, but do have wastewater?
Quite a few. Spencer and Ware and.
I think it would be important to note that because what it shows is that they're smaller, but yet they can still. They have a large enough population to sustain.
So,
Boston.
we might have to say that one for the application.
Boston and Goshen.
In Goshen,
Goshen that does not have a municipal wastewater system.
Only town along Route 9.
Yeah.
Gotta be careful with that.
Yeah, see, my expectation is their review of this and the willingness and
Goshen.
interest by the town to do this. Oh, you guys are ready to do it. Because growth,
I don't want to spell rude out.
growth,
Yeah.
control is in the operative word here.
A municipal wastewater system.
Wastewater system.
Municipal,
Wastewater system.
Well, you can take the parents out, just put commas in.
Period. I think that sets the stage for.
Yeah, what a good attention grabber. there.
Exactly.
If you've got half a dozen characters left, so change it to Boston and the only towns along Route 9 between, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll take the parents out, but put the parents per Goshen as population 960.
And you might also add about 80 miles
Take these
west of
out?
Boston.
is that what you said?
111.
For this county, that's not.
Take those out
Oh,
next to Goshen.
It's,
65 is the current flies.
oh no, I measured it as the car drives.
Some other distance kind of thing there would be helpful just to set the stage. Nobody knows where Goshen is, sure.
Yeah, the problem is she's gonna run out of characters real
We
quick.
can.
We had plenty,
500
we're only
characters,
at 308.
Yeah, including spaces,
500 characters or words?
characters.
So, and then, since we've already identified it, you can get rid of wastewater right after lack of sewers is the major.
Oh, okay, yep, okay.
And saving character.
I'm just saving characters.
Lack of,
Lack of sewers is the major impediment to commercial and industrial development.
It's 117 miles.
What's that?
After Goshen, parens,
Boston to Goshen is 117 miles via the pike, but
Oh. Should I put that in
Hundred and
parentheses?
17 miles from Copley Square, which is where Route 9 starts.
so you might put after Goshen, parens 117.
You want
miles.
Copley Square in there?
So,
Okay, all right.
parens 117 miles after Goshen.
107, well, she's gonna run into character count here, bro. I tried this and I couldn't make it work.
Do we need, okay, so the next phase of study. We need to polish that up a little bit, right?
yeah, exactly. You need to, that really needs, this one here should
we're
be the
trying-
hydro geo.
Keep in mind that, either a little bit later on, we, have to identify a ballpark figure for it.
Yep.
So in other words, you have to look at this as one chunk of the whole.
I heard somebody say 200K. It's
I know that, but that was just the golf course. I would ask for 400 to 500 to discover.
I wonder if that's a common number for the one stop. You know, Claire?
No,
It sounds
because there's actually, and I don't have it readily accessible, but I can print you out. What the awards have been for the last couple of years, and they range, some of them go up to $400,000. And what it says is, it says the town and, the money and briefly what it was for. So you can get kind of a good flavor.
But this is my understanding, this EOI would be for the hydro, the definition of disposal capacity.
Yeah.
Okay,
That,
now,
that
keep in
the town
mind
has.
that the response that you get back will be, if you haven't correctly identified which of the choices on there that this should be done under, like Al, you said the commercial and industrial. Okay,
Yeah.
and the reason is because they want to make sure that when you do it, that you're customizing it to that particular department. And starting in April is when they start having virtual office hours, where you can actually talk to that particular state entity to say, I have a question on this, or, this, that, kind of thing.
So let's change the word flow capacities to.
So before we get there,
Oh,
you phrased that, Claire, the next phase of study,
Oh, okay,
right? So
yeah.
what was,
Following the development continuum. And the reason I'm hopping on this development continuum, and it can be included in with the full application. It does not have to be here.
I would say the next phase of the development continuum.
so, yeah. So the next,
No, I know what you're saying.
so what is the first phase? What is the
Well,
phase
we've
before
already,
this next-
okay,
You've done.
I am looking at the first phase as the action
Studies to
plan
date.
that PO put together.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Which is
They
actually
don't know that.
the
do they?
second phase, because we've already we have the Weston and Sampson study.
Yeah.
We have the Paul Pazinski study of the soils and all of that kind of stuff. So in other words, this development continuum needs to make sure that they realize that we've done all of us.
Remember what our goal here is to just get us in the right bucket so we can start talking to the right.
Exactly, yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
okay.
But
I
I mean,
think
but
the-
they don't know the other studies that we've done, right?
Yeah, it'd be good.
No, and that's
So-
not, that shouldn't be in this.
So I would just say this study,
Yeah,
development continuum, is required to determine. And again, to keep it as broad, treatment plant, plant site locations, disposal flow sites. And build out potential.
hey, I'm looking for agreement from you
Yeah.
guys. Don't ask me. I'm
Yeah,
all,
but
it's all over
I
my
would do
head
the
on this
same.
one.
I would suggest that you put in here that this is building on the action plan, the wastewater implementation. Action plan, which determined that, determining the wastewater disposal capacity of properties in the town is the next strategic,
Next phase of the action plan.
phase.
But if you say something. about
It's the
this-
next
this
phase of our
continues-
action plan.
This continues the
There you go.
action, the town's action plan. For this capacity.
Do you wanna, the action plan that you're gonna be doing is the geo, whatever?
The action
Hydro
plan is already
geo.
started.
Hydro geo capacity definition of these properties.
I
Hydro,
think, Brian, what you were suggesting is to reinforce that we actually have an action
Yeah.
plan in place.
Right.
We've started it. This is the next step
Exactly.
of the action plan. Is that what you were?
Well, it's implementing recommendations of the action plan.
Yeah.
So that way they see the momentum.
okay,
That's. I
so
think that's what
help
you were
me out
getting at,
on how
right?
to spell this hydro
Missing
geo,
our hydro.
hydro, HYDRO, oh. Thank you. Hydro geo,
Assessment.
Yeah. Determination of the capacity of the candidate properties.
Hydrogeo determination.
of the capacity,
of candidate-
Disposal capacity of candidate properties.
capacity,
Of candidate properties.
of what?
Candidate,
Candidate. What did I say? I'm sorry.
candidate properties.
Candidate
Oh.
properties. Rather than
I've never heard that.
Representative.
candidate those are, we like,
Potential,
exactly.
I think candidates. is a
We,
good word to
now
use.
we have, the action plan has identified candidate properties for
Okay.
use, but we gotta evaluate.
Plural.
Cause we don't, it's still a gleam in the eye.
So it's candidate properties.
Right.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, there's many,
sorry, I'm challenged
That's
on
all right.
this, you know.
that's all right. So, so it's more generic, there's a bunch of properties. We're
Hey,
working-
I learned tonight
Yeah.
that there is such a thing as candidate properties.
I would say, the project this project implements. Not builds on.
Oh, okay,
It
this
is
project,
one of the action plan recommendations. To. One of the action plan recommendations. To define.
this is the hardest part of the
Just-
whole thing. The application will be a whole lot easier, and I'm not
Just type
doing the
two, TO,
To define,
recommendations
Via.
to the
to
hydro,
define. Or to determine. The hydro
For the hydro geo determination of disposal capacity
yeah.
of cannabis.
I like you strike.
okay, do we like this?
FOR instead of TO. Slide to the left.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For the hydro,
Gotcha.
determination.
Get rid of two.
There you go.
Yeah, just fix the beginning of the last sentence, read the T study.
And then I don't know if you,
And we don't have to have 500
and then,
characters.
you know, maybe, I don't, does this. That which defines our wastewater system capacity. But I don't know if it needs to be in there.
Okay, good.
33.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I'll
67,
take the vote.
67 left.
I know, they got room.
So
You know.
I want to claim about six
We're taking
characters.
this out.
After Goshen, you say, population 960. In parents,
But is that more important than 85 miles away or? Yeah.
EOP period.
off DLP,
900, you said?
960.
Ah,
60.
60?
Instead of scurrying to the map.
I gotta think the ones that are reviewing this will understand the project and they'll understand hydro geo. I'm sure they see the stuff. Oh, no,
Hey, I'm just
I can't imagine. They
typing
got-
what you guys tell me to type.
Done.
Okay,
And I would add and potential plant sites.
What do we,
What was that again?
I'd add, at the end,
Disposal
and
capacity.
potential plant sites.
No, I wouldn't,
No,
no, this is gonna cost a lot of money,
all right.
just doing this.
So that's what
Yeah.
DEP said. They said the same thing, so.
Yeah, you're gonna, this is gonna cost a lot of money.
do we want to just add as,
And we keeps it clean, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, keeps it clean.
do we? Do we want to add like just a sentence on what the outcome will actually be? I mean, I understand it's a determination of, well, I guess that's the
That's what we're
outcome.
gonna study, yeah.
Right,
Okay.
I was gonna suggest swapping sentences 2 and 3.
Okay,
So before you go and do it, read it and see if it makes sense.
No, I was thinking the same thing. I agree with you.
I think it flows better.
Yep.
Yep, I agree also.
all right, let's take this out first.
Control X.
Put it in.
We like the
for
flow.
for the Project. Yep, move it down before the project.
The next one.
Okay,
well, is this where you need to put in that an action plan has been developed?
Yeah. And has
For
undertaken,
previous-
and has undertaken an action plan.
Right.
To
Right.
address.
Yeah,
Add
South
on to
Berlin,
that sentence. We've identified Route 9 for development to begin addressing the tax revenue shortage. And have undertaken an action plan to address this.
funded by one stop. Right, wasn't it funded? It was up.
Partially,
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah,
and undertaken an action plan.
So that way they can, there's the continuum.
And then.
issue. Do we like this?
I think you're gonna be right at 500 now.
Are we ready for, are
And-
we ready to
and
start
action.
counting?
And action plan, not and. Two overs and stuff.
Hey,
Oh.
Wait, Claire, and action plan, not and in there.
Oh, there you
It's just
go.
two characters or one character.
You have to get rid of one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one and.
And action plan, not and action. plan.
Up.
After undertaken,
under
One
10
row.
oh, there we go. Hey, all right.
There you go.
It's like
There you
Apollo
go.
13
Bingo.
movie.
Okay.
There
The
you go.
Watts and the.
Let's save this baby before it forgets.
all right,
I'll take a print screen.
all right.
Okay, there we go.
Are we good with this?
And I am if you guys
All right.
are.
I guess we should have a motion to submit this as our
EOI.
EOI.
So moved.
Okay, so second,
Second,
we're hybrid, so we have to do a roll call. Alan,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
Claire,
I,
Sam, Al's aye.
Okay.
Right.
Removed.
Brian,
Can you do the other one, Sue?
the other one.
Well, I mean, we identified four areas. One of them would be, the other one that I thought is the planning,
Oh, okay, so,
the
that,
planner, if you will.
right, exactly. Okay, so the next thing then is when I was standing up and doing my, essentially you've got three big areas. Going ahead and requesting professional planning assistance. To work on the zoning. Now,
Excuse me, to be clear, I would respectfully suggest not to work on the zoning, to facilitate development projects that, and which will include zoning revisions
right, okay.
and
So here's the
what,
thing,
public-private partnerships,
Would
or
it be a separate
Yeah.
EOI?
here's
Separate
the thing,
EOI?
because this is where we don't want to get into butting heads. If I understand correctly, Kathy Cook has talked about hiring an attorney to write some zoning.
Yes,
So,
Okay.
Really?
there are attorneys who allegedly are great at looking at development issues and suggesting zoning language that would be supportive of that.
Yeah, I don't discount it. I'm just wondering if that's coming from Kathy, not just planning board.
No, she was trying to make things happen conceptually,
Okay.
and the planning board would actually have to
Financial.
deal with zoning stuff,
Well,
certainly.
she's spoken with the planning board.
I was just saying.
We've not talked about that with the attorney thing, but we've talked about zoning to actually support development along that line.
Yeah.
The concept has been broached, but no action has been taken.
Just-
as far as
Very, very much support or encourage that there be a cooperative process.
Yes,
With select board and planning.
Absolutely.
You don't want to go to town meeting
yes,
with the two sides opposed. Can't
absolutely.
do that.
Yep.
You can't do that. You'll lose.
And we have had conversations with the planning board about some of this, but there's some distance to go on that. So,
So
Was it well
the short
received?
answer is that for this group, I don't think that's within our charter. You are absolutely correct that it does need to happen.
A planner, see, I would urge you just. Zoning is a subset. That you can get a grant, like I was saying, marketing study. And the marketing study is gonna help facilitate a deal to happen. Okay, well, zoning issues one, they can help with financial analysis. Okay, again, this
Yeah,
is what
I
Westport.
understand. We talked about this, yeah. Yeah.
Westford, they got too many
Yeah.
West, but Westford, they got a grant for that.
Mhm.
And they're just trying to figure out how to, and what I was thinking is both on Dell property and then the other one. At the end of 85 on the other side, those are huge. And you've
Yeah,
got contacts, but you need somebody, a planner type that's gonna help pull that stuff together.
it's kind of like, what's gonna be the big attraction for, I mean, there may be a few developers who have talked about this and they're excited, great. There's also a lot that kind of have a little bit of a different perspective, so to speak.
and in a perfect world, the planning board actually drives that process, I think, which is a challenge here. Just at this point.
Um,
Again, I
do
would
you know when
recommend
that,
it's marketing.
Pio, do you know when that one was done for Westwood? Was that recent? That they got
Well-
a grant?
I know they have to spend the money by the end of June.
Oh, all right, okay, so it's probably. I'm just trying to
And-
think, I might
and
not be able
I'm
to,
sure they had it for at least a year prior to article.
right, okay.
The question for us is, do we submit another EOI for this?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's gonna help this committee. In terms in the town. Pull these things together because there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle.
But for us to submit an EOI for this part of it, I think is an issue with planning, board, who's not been involved in this conversation
You know, I understand exactly where you're coming from, but respectfully,
politically.
I don't think it's the right time for us to.
Okay.
Yeah.
First, that's just my opinion. I'm.
You know,
one of
you
our
know better.
members here, so.
We're trying not to poke the bear.
Yeah,
No, it's,
Well, then the only other one would be whether the village business district has any merit to try to implement that.
Implement what?
Excuse
To
me?
implement what?
to actually, so to essentially try and develop a
Right. It would
separate.
be to, yeah. Basically would be to engineer,
System.
permit, and build
Okay,
a system for that.
10,000 gallon or less,
Or
To show almost perfect
9,900,
Right.
98.
right, for that area. That's really what it would be.
I mean, it'd make more sense to talk to Tony Kwan first.
But that could all be part of, under the EOI.
Right, if you do an EOI just for the village business
Yeah,
district.
and there are different ways to do that, one of which
Yeah.
might be a Tony deal.
Yeah, and
Tony has been approached by that, I think, and is touchy. So. I wouldn't count on it, but it's certainly worth talking about.
I haven't had any interactions with them.
We actually can't even talk to Tony, we're always talking to his representative.
Yeah, but actually, the select board has actually talked to Tony and his daughter, who is actually running his business now for the most part, I think. And Tony's been in China for a long time, is back fairly recently, I think, so. But again, Tony is sometimes challenging to deal with.
so my recommendation to the committee would be is to authorize Claire to put something together that would be a, EOI for the village business district. It's not only one or two sentences of change.
Or downtown district.
To the downtown.
Yeah,
So
I think it's got
essentially-
a lot of the right buzzwords and,
So essentially do the same thing for the downtown.
well, yeah, I mean, so we can, but that's part of one of the recommendations.
develop a plan for a wastewater system for the downtown
Yeah, and it's,
area.
but you wanted, it's actually in the bill. You want to ask for all of it to build, so the ultimate is gonna be whatever. $1-2 million, something like that. Who knows? The talk coming.
Actually. They ask for the million, you might get the 400,000.
Well, they're really different, very different.
Understood.
Yeah, but that, it's obviously your decision. Yeah. I just thinking, Claire, you correct me if I'm wrong. You want to put in a couple,
Right, yeah.
so.
And that's what Rob Anderson has suggested in the past, at least, to have a couple of shots at.
Well, what we could do is, we could meet by Zoom.
Well, okay, so you two guys can't come to the meeting on Monday afternoon, right?
But I don't think we should have a meeting on Monday. I think two of us ought to meet with Rob and his
Or
associate.
three of us can actually.
Well,
Forms
The
four.
agenda's posted, so you can amend it.
Or we can cancel it,
Yeah,
either way. So. Quorum is 4, so we can have 3 of us.
The 26th is Wednesday.
Monday is what this is. The 26th is due, EOI is due on 26th.
29.
What's quorum?
4. We got six
Four.
six
So if
members.
you
here.
get Bob. So Monday, we could have, if Bob can attend, then we would have a quorum.
But we don't want quorum. For the mass development meeting. I don't want to post a meeting with quorum.
Let's keep these two things separate.
Okay, yep.
Finish up this meeting.
So, what, remind me again, the due date is,
The 26th.
that's Monday.
No,
No.
that's the 24th.
Wednesday.
Monday,
Wednesday, okay.
yeah.
So,
I mean,
we could meet,
and EOI doesn't have to be done. Okay, it's only, it's kind of you can still apply for the grant without
It's
the
helpful.
EOI.
It's helpful to have one in there for a variety of.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely.
So are you guys okay with an EOI that focus on the downtown? Second EOI?
Would it be in the same category? Because there's lots of categories there, right? So make sure that the same category fits.
Well, take.
Okay.
There's one
Scroll
very
down a
bottom,
little further.
the POS.
Roll down further. There you go.
Yeah.
You make that a
Second to
little
last
bigger.
one or last one, I think.
Actually, it's gonna be public infrastructure to support new mixed-use development.
Yep.
That's potential.
And we got a downtown zoning overlay for mixed use, so
So we gotta,
that's there.
we gotta do something about identifying the downtown district.
Same thing as downtown zoning overlay district.
Down district. So one of the things that happened with the zoning was to allow for the mixed
Mixed
use
use.
and all
So
that
this
kind of,
fits here, so
all right,
you could define the district. So this EOI would be for the development and implementation of wastewater system for the downtown
to,
mixed use
um,
district.
Yeah, and then, so it's not just a study, this is to go build something.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And that's a simple way to express it, I think.
and I would put in some words there, you know, these are
I hate
problem septic systems too.
There are a lot of them there, no.
Right, so it's a public health issue.
Yeah. Does the select board need to okay these?
never have in the past, I don't
Probably
think.
should.
We're not gonna have enough time.
Is there a meeting
Our
on
meetings
Tuesday?
like,
There is. I think there is a meeting Tuesday.
No, we're not meeting on Tuesday. Not that I know of.
You are now.
I've got a meeting.
You'll just be quick,
I've got a meeting on my calendar.
I don't know.
Just say yes.
No, just
Yeah,
do a Zoom meeting Tuesday morning, just to
Yeah.
authorize.
Yeah.
Submittal of the.
can we maybe
Be
just
alive.
check if we need to first?
For the village.
I'll take the action item to coordinate with the chair.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has to go through Vanessa. Just ask Vanessa. Has it,
She's gonna tell you need to go.
no, but ask if there's
Let
precedent.
me check with Kathy, see whether she wants to
Okay.
hold a brief.
and I'll look up to see if, I mean, because essentially Mark is kind of signing off. I mean, can't Mark just do something without,
That's what just getting.
Well,
If
we'll
Vanessa
figure that
submits
out.
these,
Yeah.
ask her.
Sam and I have the action item to figure that out.
okay, all right,
Figure that out.
And
Okay.
the language on this.
We've gotta be good for something, right?
Yeah.
Language on downtown is simple. To develop the plan and implement wastewater system for the downtown mixed use zoning district.
Address the public health issue and facilitate mixed development.
Yeah, we're just trying to get into buckets right now and then,
You know, my attitude is you gotta get in line.
Yep.
and
And,
we're gonna put 2 million in that one.
yeah, I'll get a better number, but assume 2 million.
Yeah.
You know,
And so Al and Claire and I will talk to the mass development guys about the district improvement thing on Monday. At least learn about it, see what's there, but okay, anything else?
I think we got a plan. When should we meet again? I'm gonna suggest maybe 2 weeks.
Couple of weeks.
I was gonna say initially, once a week, I don't think it was too much. And the reason is because it's going to take, the next deadline then for these grants is going to be at the end of May. It's like June 4th or something, okay? we saw how long it takes to write an expression of interest in 500 characters. There's a lot that has to be. Plus, the decision I think that you have to make is, and I don't. I mean, Peter's sitting here, but the thing is that it would make sense to me that whoever you decide to go with project managing the whole engineering part, the wastewater part and everything, should be involved with writing the grant. I mean, that just to me seems logical. There might be other parts to it. I don't know. Is it necessary? No, probably, but essentially you've talked to two firms now, and you have a situation where you could talk to a third one. What other firm has as much experience with what we have done over the last several years than the two firms that you have spoken with?
Let's, all right, why don't we meet? Does this time work for? A week from today, and let's plan on sort of going over the outline of the actual grant application.
Okay,
And,
yeah,
and in the meantime, we'll continue to poke at some of the other issues we've been poking at.
okay.
Does that work for you guys?
okay for a week?
Wait, so I can't do next Thursday, but it's fine, because Bob can make it, then so for
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send out an email, see if we can find a time.
Save the date.
Yeah, what,
So
when,
the goal is to work on the grant application for the one-stop grant,
yeah, these, so we're now putting in the two expressions of interest.
right?
So the next step is we actually have to write the grant.
Well,
Okay.
but I think you
Sorry,
also,
I thought there was an outcome out of the EOI that determines whether or not we even go forward.
No,
Okay,
that's,
They'll get back now since it's kind of getting to the end, but they already did one on the regional one. Northborough, Southborough,
Mhm.
and Westborough. And they got a response in 3 days.
Okay.
So they turned them around. They're only reviewing 500 characters.
and
Including spaces.
if I know the grant application varies by what category you select, but I gotta think that there's gonna be some common elements among all the categories, which means I think Leah has worked on one already. You should probably get that as our skeleton to.
I have
give us-
a negligent action item to talk to Mark about engaging a grant writer. So let me take that. I will get back to you all on what I find out.
I think one of the benefits of doing what Al just mentioned about looking at the grant application is that you'll understand the degree to which you're gonna need professional assistance. On it.
Yeah.
And naturally, I support what Claire said about, because whoever you're gonna be retained, you want somebody who's vested in, the project and has ownership, if you will, of the continuity. As well as you can see, there's tremendous detail.
Mhm.
And that associate with all this stuff.
Mhm.
So
yeah, another topic for next week.
if you want me to leave the room, I'll be happy to.
Another topic for next week could be also sort of, what have we learned tonight? What does that mean for next steps down the road? I want to be sure we're on the same page relative to where we think we're headed with this. So I've learned some new things tonight, for example, that I want to think about. So.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay. Think we got a plan.
are we ready?
I think we're ready. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second,
Okay. Alan?
aye.
Brian? Aye. Claire?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Al's aye. All right. Sure. Great.